Okay, welcome pathophysiology students. This is going to be a video lecture that deals with the renin-angiotensin system. And what I have illustrated here is the nephron, which includes Bowman's capsule, the proximal convoluted tubule, the descending limb loop of Henle, the ascending limb loop of Henle, the distal tubule. Also included in the nephron are the glomerular capillaries. Blood is entering the glomerular capillaries through the afferent arteriole and then leaving the glomerular capillaries through the efferent arteriole. Illustrated here is the collecting duct, and technically the collecting duct is not part of the nephron because several different nephrons will empty into a single collecting duct. The kidney tubule can be illustrated this way, and it can be illustrated in other ways as well. This is a good way of illustrating an important part of the renin-angiotensin system, which is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. If you note, the ascending limb loop of Henle ends maybe right about here. We have the beginning of the distal tubule also in this region. And the afferent arteriole is carrying blood into the glomerular capillaries. And so notice that the afferent arteriole can make contact with the beginning portion of the distal tubule or the ending portion of the ascending limb loop of Henle. And the afferent arteriole and this part of the kidney tubule form what is called the juxtaglomerular apparatus. And within the wall of the afferent arteriole here, there are specialized smooth muscle cells that are called the juxtaglomerular cells, and these secrete an enzyme into the bloodstream called renin. And that's going to be an important component of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So what we want to do is identify what happens to cause the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system to come into play. And a primary reason for the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system to come into play is a decrease in blood volume. This can be due to hemorrhage, which is a very common cause for a decrease in blood volume. Could be due to dehydration, and there are different types of dehydration. There's dehydration due to water deprivation, and there's also dehydration due to severe diarrhea. And these two different types of dehydration have different consequences, and we're going to talk about those consequences in the lecture. A decrease in blood volume will also decrease blood pressure. And with a decrease in blood pressure, there's going to be less pressure in the afferent arteriole. That tends to decrease the hydrostatic pressure within the glomerular capillaries, and that tends to decrease the glomerular filtration rate. And so the volume of filtrate fluid that's formed is decreased, and less fluid volume is going to pass through the kidney tubule, including the upper region of the ascending limb loop of Henle, or the beginning portion of the the beginning portion of the distal tubule. So less fluid flows through the kidney tubule because there's a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate. Now, cells that are found within the upper region of the ascending limb loop of Henle or beginning portion of distal tubule include the macula densa cells. And these cells can detect fluid flow. They can also detect changes in sodium concentration in the filtrate. And a decrease in sodium concentration in the blood is one other component to the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Decrease in the blood sodium can activate this system also. So decreased blood volume, decreased blood pressure, those kind of go hand in hand. Decrease in blood sodium concentration also would go hand in hand here in activating this crazy system we call the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So, how does the system work? Well, we're going to, again, have a decrease in blood volume, decrease in blood pressure, or decrease in blood sodium concentration. And the juxtaglomerular cells in the afferent arterial wall are going to secrete renin. And renin is an enzyme that is going to be secreted into the bloodstream. And so the renin here is produced by the kidney. And renin, once it enters the bloodstream, is going to have an effect on a plasma protein called angiotensinogen. Angiotensinogen is a protein found in the plasma, and it's produced by the liver. Remember that most plasma proteins are going to be produced by the liver. Now, renin is going to act on angiotensinogen and cause angiotensinogen to be converted to angiotensin 1. So, just to reiterate these components here of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, renin is secreted in response to low blood pressure, low blood volume, low blood sodium. That's produced in the kidney by the juxtaglomerular cells of the afferent arterial wall. Renin enters the bloodstream, acts on a plasma protein called angiotensinogen, which is produced by the liver, and produces angiotensin 1. Now, angiotensin 1 is going to travel through the circulatory system and through the lung capillaries. And in the lung, there is an enzyme called ACE. And ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. Again, it's found in the lungs. And one hypothesis that explains why ACE is found in the lungs is that the lung capillaries have a large surface area, and by having a large surface area, as angiotensin 1 passes through the lung, it's very easily or efficiently converted to the next thing, which is angiotensin 2. So, angiotensin converting enzyme in the lungs converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. And angiotensin 2 has several effects. So we'll start with angiotensin 2. And what it does. One of the things that angiotensin 2 does is cause vasoconstriction. In fact, angiotensin 2 is a very potent vasoconstriction agent. And by causing vasoconstriction, that will increase the total peripheral resistance, and because mean arterial pressure, let me move this down a bit, equals cardiac output times TPR. Notice that if we increase the total peripheral resistance, we'll increase the mean arterial pressure. So the effect here is to increase mean arterial pressure. But that's not the only thing that angiotensin II does. Another thing that angiotensin II does is it stimulates the release of antidiuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary. Antidiuretic hormone, which is also called vasopressin, will cause vasoconstriction also. And by causing vasoconstriction, we'll get an increase in the mean arterial pressure. But that's not the only thing that antidiuretic hormone does. Antidiuretic hormone also increases water reabsorption in the kidney. And with an increase in water reabsorption, there's increased blood volume. And what happens when there's an increase in blood volume? That will increase the mean arterial pressure. Remember that this whole crazy system called the ReninAngiotensinAldosterone system was initiated with a decrease in blood pressure, a decrease in mean arterial pressure. So what's the result of this crazy system is to bring the pressure back up to that normal homeostatic range. But that's not the only thing that angiotensin II does. And I'm going to have to move this over a little bit. So, what else does angiotensin II do? Well, angiotensin II also stimulates aldosterone secretion. And aldosterone is produced by the zona glomerulosa of the adrenal cortex. So the adrenal gland has an outer region called the cortex, and the cortex consists of 3 zones, and the zona glomerulosa produces the aldosterone. And aldosterone belongs to a family of steroid hormones called mineralocorticoids. And aldosterone is the primary mineralocorticoids. And it increases sodium ion reabsorption in the kidney. And by increasing sodium reabsorption, it will cause an increase in water reabsorption in the kidney. And here's an important thing to remember, and I know those of you who had me for physiology probably remember this, and that is salt sucks. In other words, wherever salt is, it's going to tend to suck along with it water. So by osmosis, water is going to follow solutes. If aldosterone promotes an increase in the reabsorption of sodium, which is a major solute, then water is going to follow that solute osmotically, and additional water will be reabsorbed. Well, what does that do to blood volume? It increases blood volume, increases mean arterial pressure. So those are the primary things that happen in response to the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. One other thing that angiotensin II will do, and I'm not going to write it here because it'll get just a little bit too messy. Angiotensin II also stimulates thirst in the hypothalamus. That's where we have the beginning of our perception of thirst is in the hypothalamus. And by drinking water, that increases blood volume and increases mean arterial pressure. So That's the crazy renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, and it's a very important system, one that everyone going into healthcare should know. So I hope this helps, and I will continue to make more of these video lectures if you find them useful.